That lovely voice means that it's time to start the June edition or July edition of the Community Resources and Tourism Committee. And as far as the roll, looks like we have everybody here in attendance and on time, which is always wonderful. So I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from June.
I'll second.
Are there any changes to the minutes?
Only absent in physical, I was here in spirit.
The minutes reflect
Well, it looks like this right here. Yeah, there you go.
We'll note that spiritually. If there are no changes other than Larry's suggestion, all those in favor of approving the minutes, say aye. Opposed, same sign. None. So are there any public comments? Everybody I know. Yeah, I was gonna say, anything come via email or anything like that? So nope.
No, thank you.
All righty. Then we'll move on to our extension staff report and we're gonna hear from Kristen.
Yeah, so I don't have a lot to share, just that our educators are going through their midpoint conversations. So we do evaluations, we do a summative evaluation at the end of the year, but we do a midpoint evaluation. So we're going through those right now and speaking with all the educators across the area. So if there's any performance related items that you'd like to share with me, please do that. Please share, give me a call or we can set up a meeting or something. So would encourage and would love to hear from you. Other than that, we welcomed our 4-H summer intern. This has been the first one in a few years. So Sam has joined the office for the summer and he's been helping Zach out with some of the 4-H activities. He's just graduated from high school. So we have this young, very energetic person in our office now where we have to, try to look like we're engaged and energetic, but no. So, but it's been great to have Sam in the office and he's been doing some really good things with Zach and 4-H. But other than that, unless you have questions about our department, that concludes my report.
Any questions from committee members? Comments? If not, is that also your financial report as well?
Yeah, I mean, we're way in the red and I don't know how we're gonna get out of it, Chris, but no, I'm just kidding. Financially, we're doing great. I think we're right on par. So if there's any other reports at this point.
No, nothing at this time. It's all right where it should be. So
Yep.
We like to hear that. You also, everybody received written educator updates in the packet. I don't know if, and I see that we also have some educators here in-house. If anybody had any comments or wanted some questions answered based on those reports, feel free to speak up. It's a quiet entourage. Okay. Then we will move on to our extension educator presentation, and we have Addison in the house to tell us what's going on in his world. Addison, you have the floor.
All right, got to. Yeah, figure out how to share this. All right. Okay. All right. So, my name is Addison Vang and I am the community development educator I have a focus in community food systems. And I'm just going to talk a little bit about what is community food systems, how does my role fit into kind of, what we have here in the Chippewa Valley with some of our other educators, and just going through some of the programs and things that I've been doing, opportunities for collaboration as well with between the different educators. So community food systems, what is it? And it's really hard to really explain exactly everything that goes into it because there is a lot that goes into what is community food systems. The American Planning Association, they have a definition, which is community food systems planning is the collaborative planning process of developing and implementing local and regional land use, economic development, public health, transportation, and environmental programs and policies. And then list 6 more, specific areas. So that kind of lists everything, land use, economic development, public health, transportation. So, you know, food systems kind of touches on everything. Um, Another definition that's a little bit easier is community food system is one in which food production, processing, distribution, and consumption are geographically integrated and benefit the environment, economy, and social and nutritional health of a particular community. So this I like this one because it kind of encompasses everything and kind of what we're doing. And this is just it's kind of hard to see. I try to print a handout for everyone, but we were having some technical issues with printing. So hopefully we can send you a attachment after this of this slide or this PowerPoint presentation. But this is a infographic of what is community food systems, and it starts with pre-production and it goes all the way through consumption. And I'll kind of talk a little bit more about this in how our educators kind of fit within this infographic. So first I have here is the Agriculture Institute, where their mission is to educate and respond to the needs of the agriculture community, providing resources and promoting economic and environmental sustainability. And they do this by applying researches, and that are farm communities and businesses face, and they typically serve farmers and ag business professionals that support farmers, but to a lesser extent, they also support community members and local government as well. And so where they fit in this diagram is at the beginning of the pre-production and production phase, just with the ag practices, the growing and harvesting. And then we had Foodwise, where their mission is to advance healthy eating habits, active lifestyles, healthy community environments, around focusing on low-income families through nutrition, education, and they tend to serve parents and caregivers of children, school age youth, adults with children, and they do have a mandate, that their audience has to be, I believe, 50% or more low income. So this is one of those areas where, with my work, I could kind of come in and fill in the gaps because I don't have that same requirements. And so they're on the opposite spectrum of the Egg Institute in that a lot of what they're doing is, the cooking and the eating, the consumption, how do, the communities get food, the nutrition, looking at food security. So that's where Foodwise is. And so this now food systems. So our mission, I guess, is integrating local knowledge, research, and resources to build a community capacity to develop and sustain just resilient place-based food system. And we serve, community organizations. There are some educators that do a lot of work with tribal partners. We don't really have a lot of that here, working with local governments, small scale farmers, and food businesses and community gardens. All right, and then where we fit in is that middle piece, the supply chain. So how I like to see it, how I like to think of it is that, we're helping the farmers in finding ways to get this produce to the people so they can actually consume it. So that can be many things. And here we list at the top, there's some policy involved, looking at socioeconomics and social cultural, looking at the environment, natural resources, conservation, climate change. So we're kind of looking at all of that and finding out how can we support this supply chain in moving food. So this is kind of a really easy, simple way of kind of looking at the food system, and kind of like at least here in the Chippewa Valley, with with the different educators that we have and the role that we play. And there's definitely, like I was saying, a lot of overlaps. Like in the ag, they do some business type of business type programming, or support. And then so there is kind of some of that overlap where I do a lot of entrepreneur and business development programming as well. So one of the things that I've been working on quite a bit is underserved small farmers. And in the Chippewa Valley, those are primarily among farmers. And there's a reason for that, so just looking at some ag census data, we do see that in the Chippewa Valley, that, and I do want to back up a little bit, because in the ag census, the Asian numbers are greatly undercounted. And we do know that in Wisconsin, that the Hmong farmers do account for the majority of the Asian farmers that are in the census. So just looking at the Chippewa Valley, we make up 14%, or the Asian farmers in this area make up 14% of all farmers in the state. And if we look at the amount of acres farmed, it's 20%. So we have a lot of Asian farmers here, and they're farming a lot of acreage. Dunn County's numbers are very small, and that I'm not sure why that is. It may be a result of undercounting, but we're not really sure exactly. And then looking at some more numbers, why, just again, some more numbers, looking at who are actually small farmers. 58% of Asian farmers own less than 10 acres. And if you look at like this breakdown I have of the race demographics, the next closest is African American at 59%, which there's a 17% difference. And then when you go to more acreage, to owning 50 acres or less, then the Asian farmers jump up to 81%. And again, the next closest is the African Americans. And I guess my numbers are a little bit off, but the African Americans was actually 41% with less than 9%. 50 acres or less for African Americans is 59%. So so when you're thinking of small farmers, the Asian farmers, these Hmong farmers do really exemplify, what is a small farmer. Um, and kind of just looking at like some needs assessments that I've seen from looking at small farmers, from the different organizations that I've talked with, I work with in the Triple Valley as well as at the state. We do see that there is a need for supporting these Hmong farmers. And again, like I had kind of mentioned, and I've talked before, we do have some grants that are supporting specifically underserved and Hmong farmers. So that's one of the reasons why I am working quite a bit with Hmong farmers. But just looking at here locally in Dunn County at the Menominee Summer Farmers Market, we see that at that location there's 50 vendors, 10 are craft vendors, 27 are meat and vegetable vendors, 14 are just vegetable vendors. Of those, 10 are Hmong vendors that are selling just vegetables. So I just want to kind of paint that picture to kind of get an idea of how many, like the importance of these small farmers and kind of their role in supporting farmers markets. Because like some things that I've found just from talking, walking and introducing myself to all vendors, not just Hmong vendors, was that I found out that a lot of Hmong individuals don't know much about other markets. So here, this is an example. I talked with a educated U.S. born, fluent English, a 40-year-old Hmong vendor who had never heard of a CSA. And this kind of underscores these missed market opportunities, especially during the pandemic, considering that CSAs was such a big part of a lot of these vendors, these small farmers, in being able to kind of get through that first year. And she wasn't the only one. There's a few others. Another thing to kind of think about too is from talking with some of these Hmong children in these younger generation and how they observe, other vendors, other small farmers. So I talked with a few, and they see that a lot of non-Hmong vendors, they're able to grow, expand, and are presented with opportunities to grow. They can leave the farmers market, but then when they look at their own parents and other Hmong vendors, they see that these Hmong vendors are very static. They don't have the same opportunities. A lot of these Hmong vendors have been a part of farmers markets for, 2 decades or more, and there just isn't a lot of opportunities. And I just want to bring this one up just because when we're thinking about secession and the future of the food system and access to food, when these young individuals don't see an opportunity, like why would you want to continue your family's business, when there are other opportunities out there, when they see that, others are able to move forward, but like for yourself, like being in this space, it's not worth it, and there's 10 Hmong vendors, only 4 are not Hmong vendors. Like when their parents retire, all the produce are going to greatly diminish. So just kind of looking at some of these Hmong farmers and some of the reasons why I've been kind of working with them, and these are all the reasons why these grants have kind of come about, to try to expand opportunities and provide resources. And so like those grants, like one that we got actually is a specialty crop block grant, which I have brought, which I have told you guys about before. And this is a collaboration or a partnership between Triple Valley Produce right out of Elk Mound, the Eau Claire Hmong Association, Black and Brown, and DACAP, doing a series of educational farm workshops And so one of the outcomes of this program was that we provide a basic program. So for one was an example is we did um a wash station program, and that's important because a lot of these Hmong farms, they don't have running water, they don't have electricity. So this is an opportunity for them to have some kind of water, a way to kind of wash their clothes, wash their hands, to make sure everything's sanitized. Um, but as a part of that too, we bring farm agencies, NRCS, Farmers Union, and other local and state organizations to present a little bit about who they are. They might provide, they might be the ones that are presenting on, say, the wash station. So these underserved farmers will start to kind of see and understand who these organizations are. And so one program that just started last year was the local farm produce uh, agreement program, aggregating program, which is a program where at the state where they aggregate produce from underserved farmers, and these produce are put back into the community, specifically into pantries throughout the state. And we were able to introduce a lot of these. Um, we were able to introduce this program to the participants that showed up at this one of our events, and we were actually told that this area actually had one of the higher applicants in all of the state. Um, so again, like just in my role, it is a lot of like design, coordinating, facilitating. I do some interpretation as well at these types of events. So that's one highlight, and it's an ongoing program. Another one, which is the Food Entrepreneur Ecosystem Development, or FEED. And this is a program, an ongoing program, extension program, where we pretty much just provide some training, bringing in Wisconsin specialists and entrepreneurs, and trying to support our entrepreneurs throughout the state on a variety of different subjects. So it could be, just like canned foods or a food truck. So this past spring, we were able to showcase collab and introduce collab to the rest of the state. And for a entrepreneur, we actually had Wildflowers that was supposed to be there. And Wildflowers is out of Chippewa County, but they weren't able to show up because of, I believe it might have been like COVID or something like that. But they weren't able to participate, but we were able to showcase who collab is, and something a little bit different than a typical like a small, like the small business development center. And yeah.
What is collab?
Collab is a cooperative. I can't remember exactly how they describe it themselves, but it's a space where people can kind of go there, work remotely, share ideas. So it's like an open space. It's in Eau Claire. And so the space itself, it's not Banbury Place, it's right downtown. They're actually moving to a new space because they've kind of outgrown their space right now. But it's a space where, if you're kind of just starting, you're a new entrepreneur, they don't have a commercial kitchen, maybe one day. But it's the same concept where it's just an open concept. Everyone can go there, work. You can get you could rent like a desk, or you could just rent like pay a membership and go there, and you have a space to kind of use. And the idea is that you could kind of bounce ideas off of each other. There's other entrepreneurs there. One thing that CoLab does do too, outside of that space, is they do provide programming. So they've been doing like, I believe it's Million Cups, which is I don't know too much about Million Cups, but it's pretty much like a way to kind of present your idea, and then I guess you could think of it kind of like a Shark Tank, you know. So they do like programmings like that, like a lot of business development programming. I believe they've collaborated, or they've partnered with the Wisconsin LGBT Chamber of Commerce to do like a open like a meet and greet as well for like you know, businesses. So they do a lot. um and then I just want to kind of go over a basic overview of kind of some of the CFS community food system programming um that I've been a part of. You know, the feed program. We actually have in the fall a feed conference coming up, and that'll be in Green Bay. And then the two grants that are tied to the Hmong farmers, and then I'm continuously kind of working on looking at some training programs in the Chippewa Valley for food entrepreneurs.
Are those grants that extension received?
The first one is one that Extension received. The underserved veteran farmers, ranchers, and foresters. The bottom one, the specialty crop block grant, is one that is specifically to the Chippewa Valley. Yeah.
Are we managing as extension?
We are not. It was done. So the lead applicant is Chippewa Valley Produce, and then we're kind of just helping. We're a part of it. Our role is much smaller, but
And what is happening with that?
right now, so we do like, for that grant, it's a series of workshops. Since it's geared towards farmers, the summertime is not really a great time to do programming for farmers because they won't show up. So right now we're kind of waiting. We're planning on doing some programming in more towards like the fall after the harvest season. So it'll probably be like October, November will be like kind of when the programming will start. So over the winter season is when we do these programs. A lot of farming type programs are kind of done over the winter. So yeah, we've talked about a couple of different possibilities. Some of the ones that we've done are like the hand washing station, with the vegetable washing station, and then with a lot of those, like I was saying, we do bring in a lot of these farm agencies to kind of present as well. So it's usually more than just the hand washing station. They'll present on a lot other stuff too. I think they've presented on pesticides and like a very high level presentation on pesticides and stuff like that. So and then some more local market development is right now I'm in the process of doing a Chippewa Valley farmers market survey to do more like community food system assessment. I'm just understand the impact of these small farmers to the Chippewa Valley, identifying barriers. I am working with Jerry Clark on rice production. Just looking at growing in Wisconsin, partnering with some farmers that are already growing rice. And then kind of looking at like market development. So those are just some of the things that I've been working on, and some of the things that I have found in this area is just lack of small farmer support, you know, need for commercial shared kitchen, you know, food business training. So those are some of the assessments that I've gathered so far across, you know, the three counties. And this is just some relationships, partnerships that I've created, organizations I've worked with or interacted with. And that is it. Any questions?
Thanks, Addison. Any questions from?
Yes, Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Addison,
Mm-hmm.
tell me about sweet corn production in Dunn. Eau Claire, Typical.
That is an egg question.
No, it's not. It's an economic development question,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be real soon that we're gonna see sweet corn sales, all around. People will have stands, and those are small farmers.
Mm-hmm.
And in Dunn County, Keith Pickering runs, if you've seen where they have the old round coils. And then they have the sweet corn on there, put your money in the box, take sweet corn.
Mm-hmm.
Steyer here over by Jake's has a one road device that picks sweet corn and puts it in the container. People come and get it.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that does it by hand charges $5 a bushel or a dozen or more. Steyer on his facility is $3 a bushel or $3 a dozen rather again. So I mean, that's a huge economic opportunity. And I know how extension works and how government works very well. But I mean, the race of the people that grow the sweet corn never occurs to me when I buy sweet corn or anything else. So, I mean, it's nice to keep those records and everything. But I mean, sweet corn production is a huge opportunity. And it takes a rototiller, a little land. I've probably got less than a half acre that I grow pumpkins and squash and a lot of weeds. Know what a velvet leaf is?
No, I don't.
Boy, I'll tell you what, if I could get out there, I would teach you to hate velvet leaf. Because it grows like crazy. But I think that's something, that, you could look at. There's a place north of Chippewa Falls on 24 on the old Highway 53 gardens. And you don't have to be an entrepreneur the first year you get out and do stuff. But if you went to work for somebody that does that, you would learn the ins and outs. I mean, I'd learn the Hmong gardens that I see, I could learn an awful lot on weed control because they do a great job. And the rows are straight, everything is clean, and it's just amazing. But I think sweet corn's a big opportunity, and I think you ought to get out and just visit some of these places and just see what they do. And when you see a stand, find out where they're at. And I was going to ask you a hard question if you've seen any sweet corn tousled yet. You know what tossling is?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, it is the male part of the sweet corn plant where it has the pollen and the cob. It's the silk, and the pollen falls off, goes down on the silk, and each silk goes to and produces a kernel. So things have to, be right weather-wise to have a good crop. But great opportunity for any size farmer.
Yeah, and I guess like if no one brings it up, it's really hard to understand exactly what's kind of going on a lot of times. So it is nice to kind of hear, from you, to kind of think about what else might be out there. Yeah, so
Well, I mean, it's a moneymaker. It's definitely a moneymaker.
Yeah.
And you don't need big acreage.
Yep.
And one other thing, Swedish heritage people their kids don't want to hold the garden either. Just so you know.
Yeah, I know it's an issue across the board.
Yeah, okay, there you go. I thought I'd really, thank you very much. And I
Yeah.
appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Thanks. Very interesting report. Thank you. So is there, I don't know if you talk about these small farmers about, is there any way in Wisconsin to extend like the growing season? You know, I think you want hoop houses or something.
Yeah, it really is just hoops houses, and there are programs out there. And it's not just among farmers, it's a lot of these small farmers and just understanding where resources are. But right now, other than climate change, it really is just hoop houses that I know of. That might be a question for our ag agents a little bit more. But I do know that hoop houses is when it comes to like access to like grants and stuff like that, for especially these smaller farmers, NRCS is doing whatever they can to provide, these hoop houses to anyone that is producing some kind of, like vegetable produce. It's just a matter of knowing that they exist and whether you qualify or not. But yeah, you just got to reach out. So we are telling them and letting people know about like resources that's available.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thanks. So when I think about the resource that these farmers bring to our area, it's pretty incredible. And it's really an economic development resource. I mean, the farmers markets in Eau Claire and Menominee, this is a great farmers market that brings a ton of people together every week or twice a week. But I think you're right. It depends almost entirely on the willingness of those Hmong vendors to put the work in and come every time with a product. There's just not enough other farmers that are willing to do that. So they're important. And when you describe the generational challenge, it looks like unless we do something, we're going to lose that. And not only not going to grow it, but we're going to lose what we have already. So I know you said you were going to do a survey. You're doing a survey.
I will be doing this.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it seems like it would be a good opportunity to begin sort of sussing out what are the key needs that this community has, these farmers have, and how could we source those needs? So it feels like out of that survey, to me, if we're going to be successful in meeting the needs of this group of farmers, we need a strategy for them. And they are not well organized enough, maybe I'm wrong, to do it themselves. They need the help from the community and they need help from Extension. So figuring out how we get that help, and what the strategy, who needs to be at the table to work with them on it and work with you, because you can't do it all by yourself, God knows. It's really critical, I think.
Yeah, and that is one of the reasons why we are like with our that grant, the educational grant, we are trying to bring in all these different farm agencies so they can see them, so they understand like, there's this organization, they do this, just to kind of give them a maybe just hope that there is.
No, I think that's critical. It might be, well, it strikes me that if you look at what's going on in Minnesota, for example, the Twin Cities, you're familiar with that because you've been over there. I mean, there are pretty well established programs for the Hmong farming community in Minnesota to help them get access to land, to help them learn some of the business skills. And it's not just putting them in touch with something. It's a support system around them. And I know we don't have the resources to duplicate that, but there's gonna be a lot of money coming into the community food sector
Mhm.
in the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And one of the strategies, it seems to me, should be to how do we as a community, as a region, organize to get some of that money so that we can build some of those systems up for these farmers.
Mhm.
And I think they're gonna need community support to make that happen. And extensions, could be a really key partner in that.
Yeah, yeah, and like the extension grant, our initiative to support these Hmong farmers, that is one of those steps to try to, find a way to support Hmong farmers throughout the entire state. Because one of the biggest issues with Wisconsin compared to the Twin Cities is that in the Twin Cities or St. Paul, and I'm saying Twin Cities because a lot of the Hmong populations do live right in the Twin
Right,
Cities.
right.
So it's really easy to gather them and bring them together versus in Wisconsin where everyone's like so spread out. So it makes it a little bit harder.
It's a hard thing. I
yeah.
know, not an easy thing. I totally agree.
Yeah. So with extension, it's nice because we're all over like the entire state. So we can, leverage that. So that is something that we're doing. Mhm.
Well, okay. What I guess I'd ask is that if there's any way that this committee and Dunn County can help sort of accelerate or build the strategic capacity, let us know.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
let's get some people engaged here.
Mhm.
I just would hate to see that. Well, losing those vendors at the farmers market would be a real loss to this community, this county.
Have a comment?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just like to echo Tom's sentiment. Your story about the 40-year-old Hmong farmer who didn't yet know what a CSA was, that was a really powerful story to highlight the need, right? So you're talking about somebody who's 40 years old, US born, fluent in English, right? So basically somebody like me, right? Except she's not like me in terms of access to information and resources. It's just a really stunning problem to highlight the depth of the need. Yeah, I appreciated that.
One thing, maybe along with that, kind of touching on what Larry said, and actually the other story that you talked about, the kids talking about seeing the other vendors who grow, but their own parents not. It would be really interesting to do some, forgive the term, cross-pollination to see some mixing of like cultures almost, where it's like, like Larry's talking about, boy, seeing how they take care of those weeds is something that he'd love to learn. But it's, folks like him that are like maybe, come from multi-generational traditional farmers that can go, okay, here's some business stuff that we can share. So there's some way that there's like, you're not focusing on one type of group or another, but it's a way that there can be some opportunities for education back and forth, where it's like, here's how you can expand, what you're doing in the farmer's market. Here's how, here's how you can take care of a farm in a non-traditional way. That type of thing would be really kind of interesting to see, where you can have some multicultural help back and forth with education and that type of thing.
Mhm. Yeah, definitely. There has been talks about possibly doing some like farm tours, maybe like a Hmong farm and then going to another farm that isn't a Hmong farm and kind of having a mix of different individuals, the Hmong community, the non-Hmong community, educators, to kind of just walk and kind of see the differences and kind of learn. Something kind of like that. But maybe what you're talking is a little bit more deeper.
More deeper, yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, it's something at least to keep in your mind, especially as you're doing some of the farmers market surveys that you're talking about. and seeing ways that there could be some outreach back and forth so that everybody can learn from everybody else.
Yep.
Because like, Tom mentioned, like if this, and it's all cultural, it's like dying off and not wanting to do the farmer's market, that's gonna be a sad economic development that will disappear.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I wonder, Addison, if, just for consideration, if it would be, if one of the things after you do your assessment, whether it would be worth bringing together some of the I don't know, stakeholders, like Westcap manages the Menominee market. And I know that it's sometimes frustrating for the managers of the market who have a language problem dealing with the vendors. And so, but I know they care about it, and they'd like to make sure that those vendors are growing and improving. And there must be other partners like that. And maybe some kind of a get together, bringing some of those stakeholders together and saying, here's what we found about the problems. What are your perceptions of them? And what can we do as a group to help deal with it?
Yeah.
Anybody else have anything else for Addison? If not, thank you, Addison. Great
Thank
report.
you.
Thanks for the update. All right, we're gonna move on, and next on the agenda is an economic development update. I don't know, is Bob here? No. Okay. Let's have an update from Chris then.
So we did our second summit. Yes, that was after our last meeting. I was trying to decide if it was after our last meeting, was June 22nd. And all in all, the whole activity of pulling together our first Dunn County Economic Development Summit was a very positive experience. In the second session, we took the top 3 identified priorities of business retention and expansion, small business development and entrepreneurship, and workforce housing was actually identified as the 3rd priority area. And kind of dug into those a little bit deeper in terms of what the next steps could be with those, identified lead individuals to take on moving further talks about those in action on those items forward. The group agreed to remain a oversight kind of accountability group, for lack of a better word, so that the work that we accomplished in the first 2 sessions doesn't get lost, and continue to meet on a probably every other month-ish basis for a short period of time until the hope would be that the Dunn County EDC would be able to take over that role of coordinating all of the various economic development players. And so the Dunn County EDC I believe has had a good start to the year. They have done their strategic planning, have reworked their mission and vision statements, have reworked their bylaws and the executive director job description. Unfortunately, Bob Bassani was pretty sick for a while. I think he's on the mend, but was out of commission for probably the better part of a month or so. And so that's kind of put some things on hold, but I think he's back and we're moving forward on that. So I think that there's a lot of good things that are happening. So I have the housing group out of the summit. Dan Lytle from CBTC has the small business development and entrepreneurship group, and Seth Hudson from Stout has the business recruitment and retention and expansion group.
So there's actually groups in those categories?
Mhm,
Okay,
mhm. They're actually, yeah, it was identification of who the primary partners who needed to be at the table were, and then kind of a call to action to pull together those people and begin to strategize how to work on some of the things that were identified.
anybody have any questions for Chris? And did you have anything you wanted to contribute from being on the EDC board beyond what Chris has to say?
Well, we didn't have a meeting last month.
Okay.
Because Bob was not well. But the fundraising went really well.
Mhm.
Okay.
So that's a positive
That
going
is a
forward. So hopefully that will continue.
Larry?
Excuse me, but what is it gonna take to get a leader in economic development in Dunn County, other than people that don't seem to be able to do the job? Bob Bazzanti appears to me every time we've met not to be able to do the job. And the fellow before him, he was sick for 2 or 3 years. And I mean, I don't know if it's a matter of not having enough money to fill the position any way than we did, or they had when we moved out here from Wilson Avenue, that they had office space there, and now they don't apparently have office space. But, you
Right.
know,
I think,
What-
I think that there certainly have been funding issues. I think that there also have been, to Bob's credit, he stepped in after two previous directors, one passed away and one was simply an interim with no funding, because the county didn't fund economic development in that, in a 1 year period, in the middle of that. So but there's a really committed group of leadership in that group. And I think that a rework now of the job description, a clarification of the expectations will allow Bob an opportunity to say, is this something that he wants to continue to do? Or, is invested in doing the things that have been identified as priorities? Or is he looking to do something else as well? I don't know. But obviously it wouldn't be appropriate to have a conversation about Bob Bassani's performance in a public meeting.
well, I take all the credit and discredit involved in that, because I'm disappointed in what's been done. And later on in the agenda, and Tom's right there with West Central Regional Planning, I have a hard time figuring out who does what and who doesn't do what, or do they do it better than Dunn County does it? Or, it's this overlapping of positions, committees, to just do one thing: economic development for Dunn County. And I guess, I'm tired of limping along here on economic development of Dunn County.
Yeah, I wouldn't quantify any longer limping along as the way that I would, in terms of what I would say would happen. There's a really invested group of individuals, all who attended the summit, who are very, very invested and doing a lot of things around economic development. There's certainly an understanding of the need to identify areas of duplication, and a strong desire to not have that happen, to develop so that if one group is particularly strong in one area, they take the lead in that, and another group takes the lead in some other area, which is why those 3 identified areas out of the summit were identified as the top things that needed to happen in Dunn County. And there are committed individuals to move those initiatives forward. So
That to me sounds like the biggest change over the last couple of years is there wasn't that committed kind of group, kind of identifying those things and deciding which things could, who had the strength in them so that it wasn't trying to duplicate. So you didn't have one individual that basically got dragged out of retirement and is having to wear all those hats, instead focusing on those strengths. So I'm I've been on this committee for a while now, and I'm much more happy about the possibility of the direction going forward than I've been in previous years based on that work of that group more than so than the past.
I hope you're right.
I feel pretty comfortable or confident about it. So at least that's where I am.
I think that the getting all of the key stakeholders together was very it was very energizing, but it was also it was eye-opening, and we had the fortune of it just happened serendipitously, but the Chamber of Commerce director couldn't be present for the summit. So she had two of her board members participate. And one was a gentleman from ConAgra, and the other was from Anderson Windows. And they were invaluable to the group because they had a different perspective and identified some of those things, Larry, that you've spoken to, of just, like who's doing what and why, and how do we get connected to that, and what are these barriers. And it turned out to be I think a really strong conversation. And then, like I say, there's a lot of different players at the table, or players in different seats. Some of the things that, there's a new city administrator, there's Stout is maybe reinvested or differently invested in the process. So I think there's a lot of, I don't want to just say potential, because I think it's beyond potential. I think there's a lot of movement forward. But it takes a long time to reorganize when people have other real life daytime jobs too. So.
Go ahead, Ann.
So I don't know, is it possible? I don't know, like a summary of kind of all the different players, or like something could come back to the committee?
Absolutely. Yep. We're working on
Or is it
that.
coming to
So-
Dunn County Economic Development, or one of those?
It will come back. It can come back here. Stout is working on, as the facilitator is working on that. In fact, I make myself a note that I have to send them the recording of the last piece so that they can tie up those, but yeah, they're working on that piece. It's part of what we paid for.
Anything else on economic development for now? If not, we'll stay with Chris and she'll update us on communications for the month.
So I try usually to get you something written, but I fell short on that this month. Yeah, we continue to make good progress. So we have a press release coming out tomorrow, I believe, if it didn't come out this afternoon, on the establishment of the housing work group out of the Planning Resources and Development Committee. We're gonna do something, we'll do something on the fair here this month, and promoting the fair, press release on the fair. Most things are getting picked up by lots of print and media. I'm trying to think about what did we just do? We did one in June with the ADRC on a new program that they have for independent living. And then that was picked up, and there was a very nice interview on WQOW with Tracy Fisher from the ADRC. So yeah, I think that I've said before, but I think the investment of the money that we've spent in terms of Doug Mel's writing has just been it's really been invaluable. We've gotten a lot of mileage out of that.
He better never retire.
He better never retire.
I mean, he's technically retired,
He
so.
is technically retired.
That's right.
The
He's
other,
technically
the other thing about it is that, and I've said this before to this group, but I think it's worth repeating. There's been so much negativity around government and, public service and politicians and, just all of the pieces that go hand in hand with that. And while we're not changing the world by focusing on the great things that Dunn County is doing, it does subtly start to change that perception. So I hear people speak to, when I'm out and about, people are talking about, oh, we really like the communication, and oh, I didn't, it was so great to see that news article, or oh, it was great to see Greg Quinn on, on the news, or just all of those things. And it's just a shift of focus that I think is really hard to put like a dollar amount to, but it is, I think it is slowly changing something, which feels good.
excellent. Anything else for Chris on communications?
I would just say, as always, if you've ever had any ideas, we just missed one, and I was like, why didn't I think of that? Where something had come up, and I'm like, oh, we should have definitely done a press release on that. So if you have anything that comes to mind, we can pop one out quickly.
Tom?
Well, it's not exactly that, but, and I think Chris is there at today's PRD meeting. We talked a little bit about the water quality.
That's on our
sampling
list.
that's going on. And Chase noted that, well, I mean, that's also something that's getting out to the community, but Chase noticed that the unexpected benefit is that all of our staff, of course, have really chipped in to do extra work to pick up the samples and go out to the houses. And he said it's not unexpected, but it seems like it's really been a positive influence on them to have that direct contact with the constituents and the citizens and people they normally don't see, and just sort of circumstances they're not normally in. So again, it's communication that is building a positive image. Good work, Chris. Enjoy.
Has everybody on this committee had their water sampled as part of this?
I have.
I did. They came, Hunter was out.
Well, these people live in the city. They don't have to worry about
Yeah.
that.
Larry, did you have your water sampled?
I'm saving that as an excuse for my downfall.
Bad water. All right, on that note,
Remember that for your
Dan,
obituary.
we're gonna bring Dan Dunbar up for our broadband discussion, because we want to kind of piggyback on what we talked about last month, which was the report of our broadband task force, with a kind of a discussion now about creating an ongoing task force or committee. And that's actually an action item on our agenda. And Dan's going to kind of tell us some steps, how we could do that, and how it might be structured and that type of stuff.
I'm going to qualify all of this with I am not a lawyer. I did talk with one though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I will just wanted to kind of share. Jim and I had a short conversation just about, all right, hey, if we want to get a committee together to do this, how do we go about this, and what is it going to do? And it turned into this conversation of, all right, so let's go look at the ordinance and find out how you can create a committee, which is always a fun path to go down. So with the idea that CRNT has been called the Broadband Committee, obviously the role of managing broadband falls within this committee. So as you talk about creating a committee to manage broadband, we have kind of this we can't have two committees that are in charge of broadband. So how do you kind of go about doing that? And that was kind of, I think, the stumbling block where we just wanted to say, there's a few options, I think, as you go out there and decide how we want to do that. And I think through our discussion, it was, wait a minute, why are we discussing this? Why don't we just have the committee discuss all
Yeah.
of these options? So that's kind of what I wanted to lay out here, is these are some of the different I would say options, and I do have what I would say is a recommendation, and I believe the recommendation, and Nick's not on, I don't believe, but I believe Nick would say that this is the way that he would prefer the safe route. How's that?
There we go.
So first of all, as you go through, there's this structure. I just kind of making sure that we're using the same terms as we go through that. So there's the county board, and then this is a committee. And so, or a standing committee. Under that standing committee, there could be a subcommittee or a work group. And then there are special committees or ad hoc committees that are under the board. So as you look at that from a hierarchical standpoint, from a CR&T standpoint, if you did like a subcommittee or a work group, ultimately CR&T would have some, call it, authority over those groups. If you go into a special committee or an ad hoc committee, maybe some of that authority goes away, right? So and that's just something or I think the committee members here to think about, that if you do that, if that's the choice that you're doing, you may be giving away some of the authority that CR&T has, and then what does that look like from a resolution standpoint as well? So, the first option, and I put little pieces of little snippets. I'll go to present this if I can hit the right button. So it can be a little bit bigger so you can read that, but I put little snippets of the ordinance in there as it relates to where the ordinance gives you the authority to do these things. So a subcommittee is essentially not allowed in the ordinance without county board action. So a committee is not allowed to break up the committee in order to work on certain different things unless approved by the board. So there is a window here for you to create a subcommittee if you were to essentially bring it to the board and say, we want to create a subcommittee of our members and expand that. That would essentially be doing the work of CR&T without the full CR&T committee. So that's an option. It would be under CR&T. That's a Dan interpretation there. I'm going with little precedent because I'm sure that existed at some point. It was obviously enacted in ordinance in 2019. So there's a reason that this exists, but and then what sort of authority could that subcommittee have? And so one of the items that Jim and I had talked about, and as we talk about like what the committee in Eau Claire had, the committee in Eau Claire was at some point granted the budget authority over a set of funds. So that committee was the one who was essentially matching the funds for some of these grants. So they were receiving grant applications, determining where they would be. They had a pool of money. They said, we're going to put this much here, this much here, this much here. So then we come into and this is kind of the unknown of, if that were to ever happen, can a subcommittee of CR&T actually be granted that authority? I don't know. I would wager probably not a good idea. So that's just something to keep in mind as you talk about the subcommittee option, which also would require action by the full board. The next one is called a work group. So the task force was essentially a work group. And a work group can be created by the board chair, just saying, you get a work group.
Make it so.
Yes, doesn't require that much work to do, but a work group is purely advisory and can't be made up of a quorum of committee members. So, a broadband committee could certainly just be a workforce that is doing all of that. Essentially, they would have make a determination. They would then bring it back to this committee in order to ultimately take that action and do whatever needs to be done. So it's just, work group is a great definition of what it is. They're a work group or an advisory group. So that could be great. That would kind of keep some of that authority within this committee to be able to oversee that. From come back to the example of like a approval, or all right, so somebody came and said that they wanted to apply for a grant. This committee goes and has a couple of meetings and decides that they really want to do this. Okay, so now the next thing we need to do is we need to wait for the next CRNT meeting. And then after the next CRNT, we can go to the board, and 2.5 months later, we're ready to approve matching that grant. Right. So there is some, I think, urgency as you get into that work that may be held back by the work group model. Alternative opinion could be, if somebody is applying for a grant with Dunn County's money, they could give us enough advance notice to be able to get all of this work done, and not expect government to be able to move quickly, because government does not. So that's just kind of that work group option. The next one, I feel like there's some conflicting verbiage here in the ordinance. So the first statement in the ordinance is the board shall establish by ordinance committees of the board and shall designate their purpose and prescribe their duties and manner of reporting. And then you go through all that, and then on the bottom it says the chairperson can appoint such ad hoc or special committees as are necessary to properly conduct business of the board. So I don't know if you need an ordinance or if you can just do it by the county board chair. The way that things have been done is by ordinance. So the legislative committee was created. There's a list of ad hoc and special committees in the ordinance that have been created through ordinance. So so those are kind of where you are there. And this is where I believe Nick felt like the best way to do this is to make sure that the board approves whatever action it is that is being taken. And that moves down, like you say, that next recommendation, that through my discussions with Nick, I don't want to quote him, but was, if you do want to go about something that would be like a special committee or something like that, just to designate the purpose and duties, and that's a quote of the ordinance there, that we would create this committee with the goal of carrying out the broadband plan. And then you could outline any additional roles and responsibilities that they may want. And like I said, the safe answer is the ordinance, because that you've had everybody on board, and you don't have to worry about maybe skirting around some rules. So those are, I think, some of the 3 or 4-ish options that you have in creating a committee. And I think it really just comes down to me to how much oversight does CRNT want to have over this in the end.
Any thoughts from committee members about any of those particular options? I mean, when Dan and I kind of discussed it, again, Eau Claire has done a pretty good job with their broadband committee, which operates as an ad hoc or special committee. And they're able to be fairly nimble with yeah, like Dan said, yeah, it'd be great if when they apply or do these grants or whatever, that they're thinking months out in advance, but sometimes that's not how it works, or whoever's doing that, the grant application has got other things that's going on or whatever, or for some reason the window's shorter than we thought. So but it's been their committee's been really good because they've had it's gone beyond like a subcommittee role, and they've had some real passionate stakeholders in the community that are really passionate about broadband and have really been kind of driving that and helping kind of, I don't know if it's so much as not only identifying some of those areas, but maybe pushing some of the ISPs toward different areas of need in Eau Claire County. And obviously the survey identified some needs in Dunn County that are underserved, or grants that haven't been awarded and that type of thing. So it might be that I'm kind of on the same leaning toward the ad hoc committee as being probably the smartest way to go. And if some authority kind of goes away from our committee to some degree, we have a lot on our plate in this committee. I would much prefer to see a dedicated group of individuals that this broadband is their focus, and they're interested in kind of driving this forward, so that we get to the point that there isn't a need for this committee, the broadband committee, because we have sufficient coverage in the county that has made it so it's not necessary.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. I'm just thinking about going forward, the decisions are going to be, again, continue to be about coverage, but more and more it seems like there's going to be decisions about access, and there's going to be money available for access and grants, and we're going to want to be in the middle of that in a more aggressive way than we have been, probably. So you're seeing the committee as being the point for identifying those opportunities and managing the budgets for those grants, or how would that happen?
I wouldn't, how do I say it? They wouldn't be managing the grants per se. I think you would have staff kind of doing some of that work, but determining what is the good place to go, right? Or what is the right project? Where do we want that? So if from an access standpoint, as more familiar with the way those grants are covered, right, is we have 2 providers that are asking for matching funds. If that committee has $100,000, do they go 50-50, right? How do you determine how much money should go to each of these grants, or whether you should even be behind them? I think that's part of that authority. And then as you get into some of these other grants is, all right, so now we have these grant funds. Are we going to be working with the United Way? Are we going to be working with UW Extension? Or who are we going to be doing, where that committee would be kind of making that determination of this is the path?
Because some of it it's not just access. And that's kind of what we kind of determined on the task force, is that some of it is affordability. I mean, and some of it is just that final hookup, because some of the ISPs charge, $150 or $200 or whatever for that. And that's too much for some people to be able to afford. And are there grant opportunities, or as part of the broadband federal, there's some money for education aspects of it. So it's some of that educational component, and in finding that partner that can help, it's like I think I should have broadband, but I don't know anything about it, or I can't afford a computer, or that kind of stuff. So it's all of those types of components that are kind of a lot of things to wrestle with beyond just what this committee does on a monthly basis. I mean, while the task force was meeting, we met every week to talk about this stuff. And we kept it at about an hour, but there were times when it went over and we didn't get a chance to even talk about certain aspects of it. And this was just mostly identifying the goals of the plan kind of going forward. So
Plenty of work as you look through, and I spent a lot of time reading the broadband committee agendas from Eau Claire, or in their minutes, right? And that's, we talked about, there's a lot of members on those committees that are just highly engaged in what's going on. So they're off at this meeting or at this conference or whatever, and just bringing all that information back in. That I mean, frankly, in most other situations in the county, there's staff members doing that. There just isn't a broadband office in the county. And so we're trying to outsource that work to just engage citizens. And that's where, as you have engaged citizens that are coming up with these great ideas and doing that, helping them have that ability to carry that out.
May I?
Mhm.
I think the other piece that a committee could have say so in helping to decide is sort of what's the structure of support. So is there a staff or more than one staff person in a particular department that's responsible for spearheading? Is there a role? Is there a role of the kind of a leader or a convener? Is that contracted? In Eau Claire County, they contract it, right?
The Eau Claire.
Turn your mic on.
Sorry. I'm usually the person that's
Yeah, I know.
watching for that. Eau Claire did hire a broadband, I don't know his specific title, I forget it, advocate, who is working on a lot of those efforts as a contracted worker of Eau Claire County. The committee itself is run by the planning office in Eau Claire County, but
Yeah.
that individual is highly engaged in that and is a Dunn County resident.
Was that our guest speaker that one?
Yes.
Oh.
So
So I think there's establishment of some sort of a structure in the form of a committee or a work group to move the work forward, but then there's also the sort of boots on the ground, who does the notices, who does all of the pieces to all of that. All the standing committees have a person, and so where does that come from? But I think that the committee we can do that in order to get all of that started. And the committee could decide what's the best structure for moving forward.
Any other comments? Go ahead.
I think whatever structure gets the work done and gets the gaps filled is what we need.
Mhm.
So yeah, what kind of group will make sure we don't leave gaps in these grants? Because there was one where it was like, are you gonna just go that extra quarter mile, So whatever structure we need.
Well, and like
Yeah.
Dan has made a really good point out of like, some of how this will happen is, one way that it could happen would be to say we have 250,000, whatever this much match money, will match your grant as long as you go that extra quarter of a mile, or you hit those 4 dead end roads that are butt up against where you are, or, incentivize our support in order to get some of the needs met that might not otherwise be met because They're not gonna do it. It's not profitable.
Yeah, and I think I remember like some of these grants came so fast, like you had no idea where they were actually going or, yeah, so if there's a group that actually can review for a little bit longer and ask those questions.
And it should be better. I think that last grant round, which was kind of it was the leftovers grant. That one I think went really quick. I think they did only have like a month
Yeah.
to come up with those plans. But the next round that we are expecting with now the budget passed, the state budget did not have the state broadband funds. So that was thought to be maybe the next round of before they would do the BEAD, the federal money. So now we're looking at the federal money, which is going to be a grant cycle that is going to be in 2024. So I mean, there's not a great amount of time to get ready to start doing this. And the providers, I assume most of our providers in Dunn County already have, they know what they want to do. So
We're gonna nudge them one way or another, hopefully.
Jim, do we need a motion to,
Well, I have that as an action item. Like,
so is a recommendation a special committee by ordinance?
that was, if that's the consensus of this group, and that's
yeah.
what Nick's kind of,
So he had said an action of the board, so I think that would be maybe a follow-up with him. Does that need to be the ordinance or not? So, but I think if we put that forward, we can do that. Now, after we talked, Jim, and then I talked with Nick, came to realize there's not a county board meeting next month. So you will actually have 2 CR&T meetings before a county board meeting that could act, because you get exec tomorrow, so it kind of missed the window for the July.
but it could be on the
Exec.
next exec.
So which would be for September's board meeting.
Yeah, the activities of exec could conceivably meet 3 times before the September meeting. It could meet in July, August, and September if they wanted to.
So, yeah, I guess as you make a motion, I guess I don't, now I'm getting into sergeant at arms here or something like that, but I think if you open that up, Nick was, I think, pretty open to, define what it is that you want the committee to do. And if it requires an ordinance, then that's an ordinance. If it requires a resolution, and I think with the time that we have, I think if you go forward with that, we can certainly agenda it next time if it needs to be adjusted, and then just kind of re-bless that idea with the proper verbiage. And I think as you do that, I can follow up with Nick and make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row before you meet next.
So do we even need to take an action at today's meeting? Because we're gonna have one more where we could actually, basically, what I'd like the committee to do is just kind of decide what the committee as a consensus feels is like kind of the best structure maybe to proceed with, and then we can go to Nick and say, okay, this is what we're thinking. How do we need to have this so we can actually have a document or something written up? Barry, do you have something?
Yes,
Okay.
I want to agree with Ann. We need to have a committee that locates as many grants as possible.
I like the visual aid.
Right. Let the record show.
No.
Let the record show Larry's handing.
Yeah.
So what are the thoughts here? Work group, subcommittee, ad hoc committee? I guess I lean more toward an ad hoc or special committee that could be more autonomous and more nimble and move quickly on stuff.
I have a question.
Yes.
What's the difference between an ad hoc and a special committee, or are they the same?
There's, from an ordinance standpoint, just a name. So it just refers to them together. Not
Sounds
sure.
good.
I looked into it too because I was confused, but yeah.
I like the word special. I mean, ad hoc to me sounds like, oh, we're just doing it. It's, temporary.
I told Dan I like the word task force because it sounds like it's moving forward. It's got something going
Yeah.
on.
Right. You could still call
It
it.
can be called whatever it wants to be called. The structure is whatever, so.
Do we, I mean, do you want to have the discussion about what kind of committee along with what the committee is going to do? Or do you want to separate those two things? Because if we're going to talk about what they want to do, maybe we want to give it some thought for next meeting.
Well, I think having the structure is a good way, but we can talk about what we think that the committee can do. And maybe that will give people time if you guys want to reread the task force recommendations that we came up with, that's kind of at least what Dan and I were thinking, that, and the task force thinking that would be a good committee kind of going forward, or a good role of the committee.
I guess I would say, like, if you are in favor of a committee of some sort, I would write something up that would be a longer proposal similar to what we see in the ordinances for some of the other special committees that said they will be responsible for this, may have the budget authority to distribute, certain funds or something to that effect. And I would bring that then as a kind of as a proposal then to the next meeting, and then you can strike and change anything as necessary.
Yeah, that sounds good. Everybody else?
I have one last question.
Yes.
So does a work group and a special committee, they both follow all the same rules, open meetings, agendas, or is one nimbler than the other? No.
They all follow those rules.
Okay, it's just that it would have an extra step reporting
Yeah, the work group
to work.
would not. 3 members of this committee could not be on the work group. That's kind of one of the bigger differences. That and CRNT it's advisory to CRNT.
Wouldn't have wouldn't be able to do stuff other than just advise.
Whereas if you did a special committee, you could say the special committee exists of all members of PRND plus whoever. CRNT, PRND. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe both of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
All right. So again, any thoughts as far as going the work group route, subcommittee of this committee, ad hoc committee? Is anybody leaning one way or another? I mean, the ad hoc committee can be, since broadband is still part of this, and part of that could be structured in that would be the reporting function of it. Even though it reports to the county board, it could still report to this committee as well, so.
I'd recommend that we defer any action on that until we get the description, review the description that we're talking about.
Well, except for if it's a work group, that description of what it does would be different than if it's an ad hoc committee, because it could only recommend. If we wanted it to have a description of.
But whatever it is, it should reflect what it is we want it to do. Right?
Yes,
And we
right.
haven't decided, we haven't got a formal description of that we agreed on yet. Might be good to look at that and then say, okay. I mean, it sounds like one of the biggest questions is how much, if any, influence or authority should this committee continue to exercise over it?
Mhm.
And I think probably not very much, but I'd like to see what it's gonna do first before we give that up.
Yeah,
That's fine. Like I say, I think in this case, I don't think an action is needed to be taken, but if you, I guess I would plan on kind of writing that up to probably to the special committee, which is the more independent. And then as you look through that, if you want to strike some things and bring it down to that level at the next meeting, that would open.
yeah,
that
that sounds like a good way to proceed. Just one more thing in your plate, Dan, you know?
Mhm.
You put it on there.
All right, I did put it on there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so that'll be back on the agenda next month. So I think that's all, unless anybody else has anything else that they want to ask Dan about that going forward. Nope. Dan's excused. Okay, moving on to the next item on the agenda, I have Dunn County Tourism. Guess what? The website's almost done. Almost done. Visit Dunn County is almost done. It's been, the directories have been filled and now they're just kind of finishing the static pages. And by the next meeting, we'll actually be able to share a launch site, actually probably before that I'll send out an email to everybody on the committee saying, go look at it and share it. So I'm excited about that. Okay.
Good work.
Let's move on to our action items. We got a bunch of budget stuff. And Kristen had asked to have her extension budget moved up to this month. I don't know why it was later anyway, because everything else is this month, but so
Might not need to have a meeting next month.
no, we're gonna have to, at least to talk about broadband, but maybe everything else will be shorter then. Okay, I guess we'll talk about the extensions budget.
Okay, so thank you. Thank you for moving this up as well. I appreciate that. So this will be my first time presenting the budget to the committee, so I'm not quite sure on the process that you've used in the past or how you like to see this presented. Both of us are new to this process, so we did have Michelle in the office to help us along, so so what I'm presenting to you is a budget where we kind of moved a few things around, reallocated a few funds. The only increases that we really looked at were tied to the co-funded positions and to salaries. We aren't asking for any other operations budget. Our, I don't know if you like to go line by line. We still do get the postage allocation from from our federal partners that we bring in for mailings. That has decreased over the years just because our mailings have decreased. So we don't accept as much money as we used to. We have cleaned out with IT. We took a look at, Melissa and I took a look at, do we use the Zoom license? No, we have one through Madison, so we removed that. That was a cost savings. We also reduced our Wi-Fi devices. We had 5, we reduced those to 2. So we just did some house cleaning there to help with the budget. We are looking to reallocate the funds that were allocated to the ag educator. That going to the ag model did create a cost savings. So we're looking to reinstate that money for moving forward for more 4-H support. Over the years that has diminished, and I think that has not helped in the sense of trying for recruitment and then also looking at diversifying populations into the 4-H program area. We did a little bit of combining some of the lines together, and then we did decrease our travel budget. The Ag Institute is picking up some of the ag travel because of the geography of our They felt it was burdensome for the county to pick up that travel for ag educators, so we were able to reduce that. Our operating budget is at 29,546. The rest of that falls into our co-funded and county funded positions. Any questions?
And I'm not sure if this is just the way this report is set up, but shouldn't they balance out the revenue and the expense for the budget? So shouldn't the levy be increased to cover all the expense?
We aren't asking for a levy increase from last year. In fact, it's a reduction by a couple $100 from what our budget, what the levy was for last year. And some of that is due to the increase. Is that what you were asking me? I'm sorry.
Well, because the revenue is only 260 and the expenses are 302,000, so that extra 42, shouldn't it wash out? Shouldn't they equal? Because it says there was some fund balance applied.
My guess without looking at it, because I don't have it, is that it is, the levy's not applied. Oh, it is.
Yeah, I saw that same thing about fund balances, so.
And then when
this
you-
line here, that seems to be where the big difference is.
So when you look at Beata's, at the bottom, it looks like the levy
Which
should be increased to two.
which one are you looking at?
It's paid like it's this UW extension highlights for the 2024 budget.
This one?
So pages 1 through 3, and there's,
Page 2 of 3? Is that where you're looking?
yeah, and I think it shows the levy as 285.
Right here.
And so,
Other.
so I think they should balance.
Oh, the 303. Well, the 2023 budget was 303, 885. The 2024 budget is 302, 577.
Right.
Is that what
but
you're,
No, I think it's actually
The
the
revenue.
line below that. So yes, at this point in time, it is out, it would be. And I'm sure it is salary. Related. Would be my guess. Because last year, the contractual services were $240,000, or this year, sorry, and next year at 255. I have to look and see what other things change.
No, but the expenses
Oh,
are
yeah.
actually going down, so I'm not quite sure
Is the revenue going down?
why it doesn't balance.
I'm not
But
sure why
maybe
it
it
doesn't.
should.
On Beata's sheet, it showed on the side, it showed that it balanced at 0.
Right,
So I'm,
See,
Yeah.
are you talking about that negative 42?
yeah.
Thousand
What is that?
361?
Yeah,
Yeah, and doesn't that, I mean, you mentioned the fund balance, so the fund balance is, this is like the
For
fourth line from the
2023.
top, you know, it's in 2023, but it's not 2024, and that's about that difference, and so.
It is.
If that, I don't know if that's what's accounting for the problem, and
but it shows the tax levy down as 285, so I think that's perhaps what the proposed tax levy should be. But
I'm not quite following.
just not balanced.
Yeah, I mean, because that's what we checked with Beata, you know, she
Right.
she put her stamp on this to say everything
Okay.
has balance, so,
Okay,
so that's where my
It
confusion.
does have
lies
that big
too.
red letter that says budget does not balance.
Yeah.
that's something too, but I.
Yeah,
But that's not at the.
No, it's not at the bottom where it's the negative 42,000.
I'm sure it's just something in the spreadsheet, but I think it should come out to a 0. At the bottom.
I think it's a great question, Anne,
What's-
and it doesn't make sense to me either, and I look at them all of the time, so.
Yeah, because it looks like it said fund balance
Yeah,
is not applied in the 2024 budget.
Does that usually happen at this stage?
Usually we're not being that methodical through this because it's not as, there's not that discrepancy typically.
It usually comes out. Didn't we balance last year?
I think so.
Who knows?
Did balance last year.
This was
Oh,
what
she
I was
said, yeah.
looking at right here. This was her whatever she did within the spreadsheet. This was what she wanted us to balance out, and that did come out to 0. So I'm not sure why it's not showing up that way within the rest of the spreadsheet.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that.
Doesn't it say the levy is 285?
It does, and actually, if you look over to that right hand column, the levy request,
Mhm.
it is putting. Can you pop that back up, please? Are we working on it? Terribly sorry about that. I think that was your fault.
Zoom has a mind of its own. It really does have a mind of its own. There we go.
So over here in this bottom right hand corner, above the narrative, if you see there, it says tax levy 42,000, fund balance. Oh, yeah, okay, it is. It is actually moving the.
It's right here.
Tiny set.
It is very small.
It's actually, it's saying from 2023,
Mhm.
it had applied $43,669 of fund balance. The change is, it's taking that out, but it's adding it in levy. So the new proposed tax levy in 2024 is $285,620.
Okay.
I don't know what the fund balance applied amount was. I can't recall from last year.
It was something to do with Michelle's change in position, from what I understand.
Yeah, that could make,
But-
that would make sense.
Okay.
But yes, so actually, yeah, my guess is, I shouldn't guess. Those two pots of money in 2023 get combined to be one pot of money in in the form of tax levy for 2024. It's the best I can do.
Thank you.
Can I ask an easier question? Are we moving on?
Well, this is, we need to vote on this. That's why we're trying to sort it out.
Okay. I'll hold my question.
So, yeah, so I guess trying to figure out where what the actual amount is then. Where's Beata when we need her?
So
So
essentially.
right here is the proposed
Yeah.
budget.
Request is for, on the expense side is the 302,577,000.
Mhm.
Does on the bottom, total expenses, 2024 proposed budget on the bottom left, right there, yep, where cursor is, that's the 302,577 expenses. And the total funding is, the line above it, the revenue is the other grayed out line above it. And that includes the $285,000 of levy and $60,000, almost $17,000 of other funding. What I can't explain for you is I don't and it makes sense that it's related to Michelle's position, the fund balance of 5. I don't know what that means. I mean, I do know what it means, but I don't know what it means.
So we have the total expenses. And the budget request is that there's the revenue and the negative 42,361. And what part is the 260 plus the 42 then what the county's portion is?
And 2024, the change is a reduction of fund balance and an increase of tax levy. So it's this, the proposed budget is you took that 2023 number of 243 and you added this 42,000, you get the 285. So it's saying, here's the request. The request is this much more levy, this much less fund balance.
And why are we structuring it that way?
That's an excellent question for
Make-
Beata.
Yeah, because I mean, ultimately, it's a slightly less, a budget of slightly less money.
Sorry, I'm still confused. So you're saying that the 2024 budget is a levy increase, right? That the fund balance got moved over to a levy increase. When I look at this line here, right? So I take it taxes general, this is the top line, taxes general property, that's levy, right?
Yeah.
And it's the
this does
same.
not, yeah, because this went away, but yet you're right. And that, which is why it doesn't balance down here.
Mhm.
This is that 42,361.
Right. So if there's a levy increase, yeah, I don't understand why this number here would be the same.
I think, well, I think here, she's not applying levy on the budget form. She is not, she's applying what the levy was for 2023, but she's not allocating new levy to the program. That's a decision the board has to make.
Oh, that makes
Um,
sense.
And then here, but here in the justification of what that is, because this page is the justification, it's saying essentially, we're reducing fund balance, which would require, I just don't know what fund it's referencing when it says fund balance.
I hate numbers.
Is this
I
something,
know.
is this something that we have to vote on today, or can we bring Beata in for next time for clarification and then vote on it?
You can.
Yeah, I mean, because basically the main reason Kristen is here is so she could present it today. We got her presentation. We can still vote on it at our next meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, so if there's questions in terms of the operations or the, positions, those kinds of things, I'd be happy to answer those. I think the discrepancies with the system, Beata would have those. And we can work through that with her prior to the next meeting to see what that looks like and what that means. And you just have two newbies sitting at the table, so something that, yeah,
And even
working
if,
through.
if Kristen can't be here, Melissa will be here. So, right.
Yes, I will
Absolutely.
definitely be here.
Okay.
And the other bottom line to it is that, I think it is, very appropriate to ask for an explanation between the levy and the fund balance issue. The substance of the budget is really your expense side. And so if there's little or no change, or that's actually going down, then we can work on the revenue side and you can have those questions answered for next month. But if you have any questions about the expense side, would really be the main substance.
All right, well, then I guess I suggest I'm going to make a motion that we table voting on this till next month. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Any more discussion?
Can I had a question, about, since Kristen's here today. So I'm looking at the line compensated, absences. So this is right above that note about the county Zoom license. What is that?
So that was budgeted last year for Michelle when she left. Then there was compensation for the vacation she had left.
Okay. Okay, got it. Sounds good.
So, and we hope that that doesn't happen again.
Okay, I was worried, like, to me, it was looking like you were getting rid of sick leave for the employees. Oh, this is terrible. I'm
No.
relieved that it's not that.
No.
Good.
Thank you.
Any more discussion? Then, all those in favor of moving that to next month signify by saying aye.
Aye.
That's what we'll do. Newbie thing. Okay, we're gonna move on to the funding for the libraries. And there is a breakdown in here. Just what this committee has typically done in the past is we have funded the Dunn County libraries at 100%, and then the 70% for the the outlying libraries. So I don't know if there's a breakdown of what we did last year or not in here. No.
Those are the percentages from last year, right?
Yes. Yep. Is there a second? Larry seconds. Any more discussion on library funding?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Excuse me. I thought library funding was one of those type of things that it's mandated and what we just did was what the law says you gotta do.
No, we don't have to fund local libraries at 100%. We can choose, and we actually, during one of the lean years, I want to say we were at 80% or 85 or maybe 90 or something. When we had a real belt tightening situation, we can actually fund them at only 70% if this committee chooses to.
I think they're a valuable asset. I haven't been a big supporter of it all times, but I have evolved.
The other note about libraries is that they do not fit within your levy cap. So even if their funding exceeds what it did in the previous year, I mean, I'm not saying there's not a cost to that. Obviously, that's a cost that then gets levied, but it doesn't reduce what you can spend in other places if you spend more in libraries because they don't fit in the levy cap.
Yeah, and like I said, we've traditionally typically funded that at 100%, except for one of the lean years 4 years ago, I think. So. Ann?
Did we ever, I can't remember if we asked this question in the past, but do the surrounding counties only reimburse us at 70 or did they reimburse us?
They typically do the 70% as well. So it's kind of everybody almost does that same sort of thing. So Okay, there's been a motion I can't even remember now. Yes, there was a second. Yes. Any more discussion about library funding? If not, then all those in favor of funding the library, local libraries at 100% and the outlying 70% signify by saying aye. Opposed? And that passes. Okay, then we have our outside agencies. And again, a lot of these that are remaining are mandated funding requests. Back in the day, we used to have a lot of people submit requests, but now we're pretty much down to almost only ones that we can fund. And first up, we have the West Central Regional Planning Commission with their request for 23,000. And I don't know if we have Lynn here. No. I don't know if you want to talk.
Why don't you join us?
Yeah.
You can't have sat there all that time for nothing.
He did sit here a long time.
I'm the third movie.
Yeah.
I do.
Then push the little man. Yeah. There you go.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate the time here this evening or afternoon, wherever we're at. But no, it's been really interesting getting to know ins and outs of what's happening here at Dunn County. There's different areas that actually do intersect with West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission. I am Scott Allen. I'm the new executive director for West Central Regional Planning. You may have seen in your materials, I was officially flying solo as of last week. So prior to that, I spent previous 5 years with the city of Eau Claire. So familiar with some of the discussions that have been happening here as well. So again, nothing to present here. I can certainly send these slides electronically to somebody if they'd like. I can send them to Melissa and disseminate those that way. The second slide there. So again, who we are, what do we do? I was thinking too, as there's some discussions going on, there might be an appendix to this. What don't we do? But we'll talk about what we do actually provide in terms of services moving forward here. So regional planning commissions themselves, there are actually 9 in the state. There's a map on the next page, but they were created over 50 years ago now by a state statute, 1971. To handle such things as community planning, demographics, economic development, grants, mapping, natural resources planning, public administration, transportation. The next page has the map itself with the 9 different regions. They're alphabetical, so West Central is last only because of that purpose. But you can see here where they're covering in terms of the 7-county region. So for West Central Regional Planning, there are 21. It's a 21-member commission. How do we get to that number? There's 3 per county. Appointments are made by the county boards. And there's also an executive committee, which consists of 1 appointment per county. So 7 total, 1 from each of the appointments to the overall commission. Then you see there the map itself. So we have the West Central Wisconsin region, 7-county region, with Dunn County at the heart of the region. And highlighted there are the 3, your 3 commissioners, Diane Morehouse, Tom Quinn, and on the executive committee as well is Steve Rasmussen. Their meeting, actually, next meeting is this Thursday, if you're interested in hearing more about that. Then we have a updated organizational chart. I am one of 4 new people that have started since April. So vast majority of those are due to some recent retirements. My predecessor, Lynn Nelson, is one of those. She concluded her tenure at the end of June. So goal, we have a goals slide just to talk about kind of the three different things that we kind of do to help assist units of government in planning for physical, social, economic development needs of the region, serve as a coordinating organization between federal and state agencies, assist units of government working on issues that occur at a regional level, and provide technical assistance, advice, and services directly to individual units of government as well. Talk about that here in a moment. So kind of our four general areas of service: economic development, transportation, community development, and conservation and mapping. Some more details under each of those won't eat up more of your time than necessary here, but you can kind of see some key areas within each of those different categories. Moving on then to our funding requests. Again, giving a little bit of context. So historically, starting back 2022, just going back last couple of years, so last year essentially 22,300, just a little bit uptick for this year, 22,610, and a little bit more here this year, 23, or for next year, 23,473. That's referenced in the kind of the levy notice or letter that was also provided in your packet as well. And that talks about kind of how that equalized real estate value calculation led us to that 23,473. The county service charges is kind of what that's called, are used to provide local match to federal, state, and foundation grants for regional planning, community development, economic development, transportation programs, take on regional projects requested by the commission as a whole, providing technical assistance to counties and local governments within the region. And again, just maintain the expertise and capacity necessary to provide that. We have 15 staff members, including myself. Added one additional senior planner this year. That was one of the new hires back in April. And then finally, just providing some Dunn County specific project examples from this past year. There's an image there, talks about the housing needs assessment that's actually presented to county board in 2 weeks time. And one of our senior planners, Susan Backey, I think was already meeting with Chris and maybe Dan as well today, just to kind of talk about that presentation and the materials that will be shared with the county board here in 2 weeks. Some more specific numbers in terms of dollar amounts. The first bullet point there talks about in coordination with Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation, WEDC, provided administration of the Main Street Bounce Back Program, which were $10,000 grants awarded to 860 organizations in the region. So $8.6 billion, and that included 49 in Dunn County, so almost $500,000 alone in Dunn County. A third bullet point talks about, again, developing those housing studies for the county, but also the city of Menominee and the village of Boyceville. And then a few bullet points down, we also house the Regional Business Fund, or RBF. That included 3 loans last year for Dunn County businesses, totaling $67,000, with 8 jobs created or retained, and over $10,000 in private funds leveraged. And I have already been seeing the numbers here for the first half of this year, and we're going to be exceeding that across all counties here, I think, for 2023 as well. So with that, again, there are a couple things to it. Again, thank you for your time and for your partnership. Last slide there is my contact information, phone number, email, and that wcwrpc.org is our website. We try to keep that up to date. We have information, for example, on some of the items you've already been talking about, such as broadband, economic development, and things of that sort. In particular, related to broadband, for example, as you're talking about the broadband committee, special committee, I like that special committee or task force. One of my past employers, not here in Wisconsin, the mayor there, everything was a task force. This was a lot more energetic and
action,
progressive and proactive.
It is.
It didn't matter what it was. There's a group that studied waste management, how to manage trash haulers. And it was the waste management task force. So it's pretty exciting. So just food for thought, but also with that too, again,
We have very few task forces here, so we won't overdo it.
that's, you're right. Yeah, you're right. You don't want to water that down, but
Yes.
Right. So with the broadband, for example, that special committee, could be a committee then that could reach out to the Regional Planning Commission for assistance with applying for grants and things of that sort. One in particular that I know has become more popular lately through the state is community development block grants for public facilities. So you're talking about kind of that last mile or last quarter mile of some infrastructure. That could be something that we could assist with in terms of some grant proposals. Just as an example, we're working with other individual local units of government, villages in towns in particular for those types of things, but certainly something we could look at county level as well.
Wonderful.
All right.
Anybody have any questions for Scott or comments?
Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Just being fair to Lynn Nelson. I'll ask you the same snide thing that I asked her. It appears that anyway from Dunn County and the three members, I would say, don't have much of a diversity of opinion on things. And I don't think you're a political organization.
No.
But I was just wondering, are you just a group of people that come together that say yes to everything?
I'll find out on Thursday at the commission meeting. But again, each of the three appointees are appointed by the county board, and they don't need to necessarily all be county board supervisors either. They
Well,
could be.
I
They
see
could be,
that,
individual
I had out the
presidents.
county book because I do have a concern, with overlapping jobs and who does what, and,
Mhm.
who gets jobs in the Dunn County and who doesn't. Because that's what really counts, because, I gotta write out a check in about a week or 10 days, for the second half of the property tax.
Mhm.
And I would like to think that, those dollars, are taking care of a lot of needs. And one of those needs are, getting jobs for people in the county, and, so, I think you guys do good work for what I can tell, but I mean, I just wonder, like I said, snide remark. I would think you ought to have a little more diverse of opinion on, your members, and I can only speak for my opinion of, where we're at.
Okay.
In Dunn County. And I see that you have, well, that was the other thing, that all three commission members, are appointed till 24.
Mhm.
Is there a reason why you don't have any staggering of people coming in? I mean, does a whole group of three come in every time? Or
Sure. Yeah. Typically, that's how it's been done. Is every 2 years. They're
They
reappointments
follow
or
the
new
county
appointments.
board appointment because they're a board appointment. And so they follow, so there'll be an election in 2024. And then there will be potentially new county board members and there will be new appointments to the Regional Planning Commission for the next 2 years.
I'm not looking for a job. It's just.
Tom?
I just say, if you look, Larry, if you look at the broad makeup of the commission, it has all people from every possible stripe, and many of them. If you're concerned about political partisanship, which I don't think you should be on a commission like this, I don't think you need to worry about it. It's covered, really well covered. You'd be very happy with the people there.
Well, unless I ask, I don't know.
Well, okay.
Any other questions for Scott? If not, thank you, Scott. And do we
I'd
want to?
move that we approve the request from West Central Regional Planning for the $23,473.
Is there a second? Any additional discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Budget passes. Thanks, Scott. It was, thanks for the helpful little update to it. I think it's always good to get an update of what everything's going on, and congratulations on the new gig.
Thanks for sitting through the long meeting.
Yes. Okay. Moving on to the next funding request is for the Dunn County Housing Authority, and usually we have, and Tammy's usually here, I think, to talk about it, but she's not. So I don't know what to say other than that we have this request from them, and this is, if I am correct, it's something that we've generally have always approved as is, because it's not a huge amount of money. So I don't know, just because you're involved in a housing study right now, Chris, do you want to even speak to the Housing Authority as far as what they do or
Sure.
anything
I
that-
mean, I can really briefly.
Yeah.
So actually, so there is a Menominee Housing Authority and then there's a Dunn County Housing Authority, and they don't overlap. So the Dunn County or the Menominee Housing Authority covers the city of Menominee, and the Dunn County Housing Authority does the remainder of the county. Our money, while not, I was mistakenly, I always believed it was also statutorily required. It is not statutorily required, but it does provide Dunn County's match to, again, all of the money that they are able to procure to bring back in through the housing and urban development programming to provide people with rent assistance and subsidies for low income housing. So generally people qualify through a process of application for some rental assistance, and then they need to go out and find resources that meet the requirements of using that assistance. So they have to find a landlord who will comply with the requirements as they're laid out. And that I know is something that Tammy has spoken to earlier, that gets harder and harder to find because it's a relatively small amount of money that people are receiving as a subsidy, and renters, people who renters, well, whatever.
Renters.
Renters, people who rent. No, well, people who are the rent to the renters.
What?
Whoever, landlords.
Landlord.
Landlords have many opportunities to rent all kinds of different people these days because the rental market is so tight. So as a general rule, people may qualify for housing and assistance in housing and not be able to find a place to be able to spend that very easily. But that is what, so they pretty much solely administer that HUD program.
And generally, this committee has been supportive of that because it covers greater Dunn County, and it's not just focused strictly on, it's not focused at all on the city of Menominee. So Larry?
Brings money.
Yes.
Yes.
And I mean, I think Tammy is the organization.
Yes.
I
She
don't even
is,
think
right.
she has
I think it is her.
secretarial
Yeah,
help.
maybe,
So
but
I mean, not a lot of money, I think, going out to hopefully helping a number of folks. So I mean, if you like libraries, you ought to help people move into your town.
Mhm. So I would entertain a motion to
I so move.
fund the Dunn County Housing Authority. Larry has a motion. Is there a second? And we have a second. Any further discussion? If not, all of those in favor of funding the Dunn County Housing Authority at their requested budget level signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Passes. Final item on the agenda is funding request is for Dunn County Economic Development Corporation. And I guess it's been mentioned a couple times that Bob is ill, so he's not here to speak to it. So Does anybody want to speak to the funding request? It was, got it in just in time, to even being part of this agenda, so.
Let me just say a little bit of background. So if you recall, so 2 years ago, the county did not fund the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation. Last year, the corporation came through with a request for the same amount of money, $55,000. And you made a decision to essentially set that money aside and learn a little bit more about economic development. And then we did a little deeper dive in that. That's part of what led to the development of the summit, was because there were all of these different players and people were interested in coming together and having better conversations about economic development in Dunn County. And the Dunn County Economic Development Corporation also undertook kind of some revisioning for what their role would be. I would say that continues to be ongoing, both in terms of like I say, having rewritten the mission and vision, their bylaws, looking at their executive directors, job description, and now creating some additional accountability to meeting those requirements. And I think that I think the Economic Development Committee or board has become more energized over the last year as they've begun to see some shaping of what has been kind of a rise of the albatross that rises out of the ashes, but a little bit of the rising out of
Phoenix.
Phoenix. All right. Well, it's not the
Albatross.
albatross, it's not- Oh, that was a good one. Oh, that's bad. The phoenix rising out of the ashes, might be appropriate. I think that it's been a long haul for them, and but I have been very involved in the last year, both with them and with the Greater Menominee Development Corporation. There's some really good conversations that are happening about how to be much more collaborative and what we might be able to do together. It's a little premature to talk about some of that stuff because it's all kind of in the works as a result of at least with input from the summit. But I think good progress is being made.
So the funding request is basically to be at the same level that we provided for this year, which is $55,000, which is it's a fairly minimal investment, and kind of like, speaking to Larry's frustrations with this, I think that with this group that's been meeting, I can see some positive direction. I think this budget request just kind of keeps things on a status quo till more of a direction is planned. And, whether that ultimately is decided that there needs to be a change in that, whatever that leadership is with that. And that could be something that the board, I guess, talks about. I think this kind of keeps everything moving forward until that can be made, I guess, is my thought. So anybody has some additional thoughts? Larry?
Have a question. Ann would answer this, I suppose. Where does this group meet and how often do they meet?
It's the third Tuesday of the month, so monthly, and right here
Okay. And
at 4:30, so same time.
and
next
in
week.
the past, some of them have just been Zoom meetings, or not?
Well, during COVID. And so when I first started last year, they were Zoom, but now they're in person.
Okay, then one last thing. I think it was a big blow to their organization when they no longer had office facilities. And that was part of the Wilson Street. Has anybody looked into providing them office space in this building?
We have had those preliminary discussions. I think some of that will depend on the sort of the form of leadership going forward. Not to speak particularly cryptically, but Bob came out of retirement to do this. And I don't, I think he had, especially when he hasn't been well, recently, I think has questioned whether or not it's something that he is going to continue to do. He may choose to do that, but so I think it kind of depends on kind of what that leadership looks like going forward. But we have had some of those conversations about some in-kind donation on the part of the county in terms of maybe some space or some administrative support, like for instance, out of my office. It's nominal what's needed, but like we did 2 mailings for the Dunn County EDC. They provided all the materials and then we sent out their fundraising stuff. And just because I have an, administrative staff that can help to do some of that.
To speak of coming out of retirement. My wife just asked me the other day is, how long are you gonna continue doing these cows? And I spent $17,000 in concrete and I thought, well, I'd like to get a few years of not getting stuck with a skid steer. So here we have the discussion earlier from Extension about their intern, the summer intern. And I was fortunate to have an intern in Eau Claire County with former ag agent over there, Willard Ham. And I had a young guy today stack hay for me that I thought I needed to hire 2 people to do. This economic development seems like to me is kind of a legworks job. You get out and you see people, you talk to people, you get where you need to be at this conference and that conference and all that kind of stuff. And as long as I mentioned other things you shouldn't be talking about, youth is a great thing for getting jobs done. And I see Dunn County Economic Development as needing youth to get the job done. And just because, you ought to, I'm tired of hearing the same thing over and over and over again about a potential small tool business moving into the area, blah, blah, blah. And when I ask a simple question about what's going on across the street, as far as building a new road, I think you ought to know what it is and what's it going to involve. Is it going to offer sewer and water for how many different businesses or hospital or clinic or whoever it is? So, this coming out of retirement thing, it is a nice thing when you're trying to maybe save money, but I don't think it's a nice thing when you're trying to get a job done.
May well be.
Okay.
All right. Is there a motion about the budget?
So moved. To
Um,
approve the 55,000 for Dunn County Economic.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any additional discussion? If not, all those in favor of approving the budget signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any of those opposed, same sign,
Aye.
and passes. And let's see, on the agenda is the action to create a Dunn County Broadband Task Force or Committee. We already decided to move that to next month. So we will not be taking action on that. Next meeting of this committee is Tuesday, August 8th. Here in this room. Are there any announcements?
I have one thing that I just wanted to say. There is the obvious hole in the external organizations requests of the $10,000 that was committed to Doug Mel for this year. And so the reason it's not in there is because I'm working on trying to find a spot to just tuck a small communication budget. If you, no, that was community administration. We did do a contingency request. I did a contingency request this year for an extra $5,000 that could be used to like boost social media posts and buy Krista a tripod and et cetera, for communication. So is that we'd put that, the money for the communications and the little bit of extra supports to that, in a particular spot, probably in the admin budget, just because Senate loves me to kind of, oversee that, but it's not forgotten. It
Okay.
just, I ceased viewing it. We'll still report to this committee, et cetera, but just, it seems
That's
like
where it's gonna
slipping
live.
it in a spot.
Sure. Makes sense. Any other announcements? Larry,
Dunn County Fair just around the corner
I was
here.
wondering if someone was gonna bring it up.
Well, somebody here is going to bring it up and somebody here is going to be there every day. So I really, invite people to partake in it and see what it is. And, cows and livestock aren't your thing. Walk through the area and see the youth with their garden produce and, everything down to building Legos. Is a project. And the vendors are happy to serve you. And I've been told that if you buy fair food and eat it while you're walking, the calories don't stick to you. So
Magical.
get to the fair if you can.
And I personally am looking forward to the sweet corn booths as soon as he brings those little spools, so I can buy that almost every week.
Yeah.
With that, this meeting is adjourned.